There we go. So Harms and Mark, I'm doing today in 1080p, 30 frames per second, so that I can send it to LinkedIn as well. Have a look at the quality. If the quality is too low, I'll go back to 4K and work out what we can do about LinkedIn. But I want to send this to LinkedIn as well to see if anyone watches it. Let's have a look. I should be live on LinkedIn. I don't even know what that looks like. I don't use LinkedIn or enjoy LinkedIn, but I know I need to be doing it a bit more. Okay, let's kick off. So we are now live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Great. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, the 24th of February. This is AI with Kyle. We're going to be talking through the latest AI news of the day, plus answering live audience questions that are coming in from YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Oh, and Facebook. Sorry, Facebook. I always forget about you, but you are here as well. Bit bad, isn't it? So we're going to be talking today about this tweet from Anthropic. We've identified industrial scale distillation attacks on our models by DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax. So Anthropic, the creators of Claude, are accusing several of the largest Chinese labs of a distillation attack. Now, I've personally never heard of it as called a distillation attack before, but we're going to look into what that means. This meme, I think, is quite apt here. DeepSeek coming along saying, let me explain, and Anthropic saying, there's nothing to explain. You're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen. So what is happening here is the Chinese labs are distilling. They're creating smaller versions of Claude and releasing them as their own models. This is what Anthropic are saying. Of course, Anthropic have kind of done this to the whole of the internet and all of the books and all of the copywritten material out there, in the same way that OpenAI and Google and all of these large models have. They have got the whole of the internet and they have distilled it down into their large language models. What these Chinese labs are supposedly doing is doing a distillation attack and replicating all of that work. So we have thieves stealing from robbers in this particular case, but we'll get to that in a moment. So let's have a look at what's actually happening, what distillation is, what Anthropic are claiming the Chinese labs are doing, whether or not we think they're actually doing it. And I think there's some good reasons for hesitancy here, and what this means if it's true, what this means if it's not true, because there's a couple of different ways that this could go. So it's a very interesting topic. But first we need to know what distillation is. So basically distillation, I'll pull up, let's see if we can find a graph or a picture. Let's see, that's a bit of a rubbish one. There must be a decent picture. That would do. So in distillation, what we basically do is we ask lots of questions to a model like ChatGPT or Claude, and then we get the answers back from that model. What this allows us to do is to know how a particular model answers certain prompts. We can then take those couplets, so the prompt that we put in and the response that came from the model, and we can use those to train a new model. So what we're doing is we are training on the responses of a teacher model. We have a teacher model and we have a student model. Now, this is a very normal and a very valid way of creating models. Often we will use this to distill a model that we can use for putting on a mobile device, for example. We'll create a smaller version that we can use on mobile, or anywhere where we just need our inference to be faster. We don't necessarily need it to be as good, but we just need speed and we need it to be low cost. So distillation is a very normal way to train models. However, what normally happens is you distill your own models. So Anthropic will distill their models into smaller versions of Anthropic, Claude. OpenAI will distill ChatGPT into smaller versions of ChatGPT. That's a very normal process. What Anthropic are saying is the Chinese labs, so DeepSeek, Moonshot, who create Kimi, and Minimax, they have done a distillation attack where they are coming over to Claude and they are sending in a lot of different requests. They're prompting it again and again and again, 16 million interactions apparently, getting the answers from Claude and using that to distill into their own models. Claude is a particularly good target for this because it's the only one, someone correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's the only one that still shows its chain of reasoning. So there was a fear, I'm not sure if it was ever proven, but back in 2005, this was a big issue again. Sorry, 2025, goodness me. 2025, lots of people were saying that DeepSeek R1 was a distilled version of ChatGPT. I think it was ChatGPT O1. So O1 was OpenAI's first big kind of reasoning model. It was their first big, oh dear, what's happening? Oh, LinkedIn broke, that's fine. It was their first big chain of thought reasoning model that they released. It showed, and this was the one that supposedly DeepSeek distilled to come out with DeepSeek R1. So a lot of people thought that there was some kind of naughtiness going on back there. So now Anthropic are claiming this has happened with their new models, Opus. Opus has been distilled into various different models by DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax. Whether or not this has happened, I think is up to debate. Let's have a look at Anthropic's actual article. So they've said, we've identified industrial scale distillation attacks on our models by DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax. These labs created over 24,000 fraudulent accounts. Now this is through Hydra servers, I think, and generated over 16 million exchanges with Claude, extracting its capabilities to train and improve their own models. Now, right away, 16 million is not that many. It really isn't that many. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. So Anthropic admit distillation can be legitimate. AI labs use it to create smaller, cheaper models for their customers. So distillation as a process, pretty normal. It's when we ask a bigger model, lots and lots of questions, the teacher model. We prompt it again and again and again. We get the responses from it, and we use the prompts and the responses to train a smaller model. Totally legit. So, but foreign labs that illicitly distill American models can remove safeguards, feeding model capabilities into their own military intelligence and surveillance systems. So this is a dog whistle. This is Anthropic saying, this is about national security, and if we let the Chinese labs get away with this, this is a threat to American sovereignty. This is a threat to our security. This is a threat to our very being. Now, this escalates this claim. Just saying, hey, they've been distilling on us, they have been attacking us, and they've been distilling, it's against terms of services. That's one thing. That's kind of saying, hey, you're not really playing fair, and we don't like you doing this, and we think that, you know, we should compete fairly. That's one thing. This ratchets it up a level. This is saying, hey, if you are illicitly distilling American models made in America and then using that to remove safeguards, you can then, or the Chinese will then be using that in military intelligence and surveillance systems. And this article that they've actually written goes on to talk about like biochemical weapons, etc., etc. So they are really ratcheting up the stakes here by saying that this isn't just competition between two companies making AI models, but this is a national security threat. These attacks are growing in intensity and sophistication. Addressing them will require, there we go, rapid coordinated action among industry players, policymakers, and the broader AI community. This is an appeal to Washington. This is an appeal to Congress, to the president, to basically block Chinese models, to fight against Chinese models, to potentially give more money to companies like OpenAI and Anthropic by pushing this forward as a security risk, a national security risk, and making it a priority. It is also, I think, an attack against open source models, because the Chinese models are open source and you can access them. You can do with them as you wish, which is a threat to the underlying business model of the closed source labs. OpenAI and Anthropic release models. They spend billions of dollars preparing these models, launching them, and then a few months later, the Chinese come out with one that is just as good, but it's open source. That undercuts the whole mission of these closed source labs. So I think there's a lot going on here. Let's have a look at the actual document that they put together. So Anthropic do love an essay. They love to put out these kind of blog articles. So we have identified industrial scale campaigns by 3 AI laboratories, DeepSeek, Moonshot, and Minimax. Moonshot make Kimmy. To illicitly extract Claude's capabilities to improve their own models. Now, there's a lot of emotive language here. illicitly. Again, distillation is a very normal activity in artificial intelligence. Distilling someone else's model, cheeky, but they are pushing this. They are pushing this to make it seem like a national security threat. These labs generated over 16 million exchanges with Claude. Not that many, we'll talk about that in a moment, through approximately 24,000 fraudulent accounts. In violation of our terms of service, yes, and regional access restrictions. Claude is banned in China. You cannot use Claude in China. There are ways around it, basically through third parties who provide access, and that's what is going on here. These labs use a technique called distillation, which involves training a less capable model, a student model, on the outputs of a stronger one, a teacher model. Distillation is a widely used and legitimate training method. Good, I'm glad that they recognize that. For example, Frontier AI labs routinely distill their own models to create smaller, cheaper versions for their customers. But it can also be used for illicit purposes. Competitors can use it to acquire powerful capabilities from other labs in a fraction of the time and at a fraction of the cost that it would take for them to develop them independently. This was the accusation against DeepSeek, saying previously, back in 2025, saying that they distilled ChatGPT's O1 model to create DeepSeek R1. And it's happening again, apparently. These campaigns are growing in intensity and sophistication. The window to act is narrow, and the threat extends beyond any single company or region. Okay. Addressing it will require coordinated action amongst industry players, policymakers, Washington, and the global AI community. So yeah, they are definitely pushing for regulation. They're pushing for probably more money to be sent to Anthropic to fight this. And they are, I think, pushing against open source models in general. Somebody in comments is saying, funny thing, Kimmy called itself Claude in my chat the other day. Yeah, a few people have noticed this, that Kimmy, if you ask Kimmy, like, hey, who are you? Tell me about yourself. Sometimes it will say, hi, I'm Claude. Why distillation matters. Illicitly distilled models lack necessary safeguards, creating significant national security risks. Again, this is the dog whistle here. Anthropic and other US companies build systems that prevent state and non-state actors from using AI to, for example, develop bioweapons or carry out malicious cyber activities. Okay, you can still put safeguards on them, and if you're distilling, that suggests that by distilling, there is the ability to do malicious actions is somewhere inside of that model in the first place, and that we're just a couple of prompts away from being able to get to it. So by distilling, we're able to get through the safeguards. I don't know, I'm not sure about that. Models built through illicit distillation are unlikely to retain no safeguards, meaning that dangerous capabilities can proliferate with many protections stripped out entirely. This is often an argument against open source models in general as well. And if you run a closed source lab like Anthropic, like OpenAI, you don't really like open source models being available, because if they are even 80% of your quality at a much smaller cost, that is a threat to your business model, and a threat to you investing huge amounts of cash into building these models. Foreign labs, China, that distill American models can then feed these unprotected capabilities into military intelligence and surveillance systems, enabling authoritarian governments to deploy frontier AI for offensive cyber operations, disinformation campaigns, and mass surveillance. And we want to keep that for our government. How dare another government do this? If distilled models are open source, here we go, this risk multiplies as these capabilities spread freely beyond any single government's control. This is always the argument against open source models is, hey, there are bad people out there, and if we give them the power of open source models, they're going to do terrible things. So we should retain the control. This is the argument that Meta put forward. So Meta used to be the leaders in open source models in the West in particular. They just stopped putting them out, and this was one of the arguments they put forward was, oh, it's actually quite dangerous, and we'd rather keep them inside. And oh yes, we are also going to profit from them by keeping them to ourselves, but it's for your own good. So this is the argument often put against open source models, whereas the Chinese labs are just putting out open source models and saying, build on this, create. We want to make sure you have access to these tools. Here you go. Which, one, great for humanity, but two, is definitely a cynical way to attack the American AI market and to bring the whole thing crashing down. So let's be under no illusions here. There's some very smart people in charge of that decision. Distillation attacks and export controls. So Anthropic has consistently supported export controls to help maintain America's lead in AI. So not allowing Claude to be used in China. And it is not allowed to be used. Distillation attacks undermine those controls by allowing foreign labs, China, including those subject to the control of the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, to close the competitive advantage that export controls are designed to preserve through other means. Without visibility into these attacks, the apparently rapid advancements made by these labs are incorrectly taken as evidence that export controls are ineffective and able to be circumvented by innovation. So this is, if they're right here, if Anthropic, if we believe them, and believe that these models are being distilled, and believe that the Chinese can't actually do this themselves, this would explain why the Chinese models tend to be around 6 months behind, because it means they're not actually innovating, but instead they are distilling, and they're working on the efforts of OpenAI, they're working on the efforts of Anthropic, and basically distilling and using them moving forward. That might be the case, and if that's true, that means there is less of a threat, because the Americans will always be about 6 months ahead if the Chinese are unable to actually push forward. Because by definition, when you distill a model, you are never going to get a more advanced model. It's always going to be a smaller, lighter weight version of the larger model. That's just part of the there we go, just part of the way the mechanism works. So model distillation means you're basically getting rid of a lot of the chaff. You are filtering out that chaff, and you're just retaining the gold. You're retaining the good parts of that model, but those good parts will not increase through distillation. So in the same way with whiskey, you're just kind of intensifying it. You're making it more distilled, but you aren't necessarily able to add more alcohol over time. So I'm mixing a lot of metaphors here. So the limitation, shaking the stand. Distillation extracts existing value, like gold, from the noise, sand, to create efficiency. It cannot create new intelligence greater than the teacher. So you don't necessarily get more gold. All you've done is just removed the sand from around it. So very, very important. If that's the case, then the Chinese are not actually able to overtake America without their own innovations. So if that's the case, that actually decreases the alarm that Anthropic are putting forward out here. But that doesn't seem to be the way they're seeing it. In reality, these advancements depend in significant part on capabilities extracted from American models, and executing this extraction at scale requires access to advanced chips. Distillation attacks therefore reinforce the rationale for export controls. Restricted chip access limits both direct model training and the scale of illicit distillation. Sure. Although you could probably distill outside of China. Yeah, I don't see why you'd have to do it inside of China, but that's fine. What about Sesame? Oh, the Sesame credit. Oh, Sesame AI. Sorry, not Sesame credit. So Sesame credit is a kind of a social credit score in China, which has been blown out of all proportion. Sesame AI, I don't know enough about that, sorry. So what I think is really interesting here is they then go on to talk about what's been going on, what's been distilled. DeepSeek is the number one item here, but there are only 150,000 exchanges between that were used in the distillation. And then we go down a bit. Moonshot apparently had 3.4 million, and Minimax had 13 million. So I don't really know why they're starting with DeepSeek. Maybe because people know it, and they know it's a Chinese model and it's a bit more scary sounding. But 150,000 exchanges is not that much. So I'm surprised they're able to distill based on this. So an exchange when I go and prompt a model, I will put in my instructions. The model, a reasoning model, will then work out what it needs to do, and it will work out the tasks or the tool calls that it needs to do. And then the model will go off and do the work and then return the work to me. But between me putting in that initial prompt and receiving my answer, there are multiple exchanges. Information is going back and forward, back and forward. The large language model is being requested multiple times during that. So it means, here we go. It means, yes, 150,000 might sound like a lot, but that could potentially be, I don't know, a few tens of thousands of prompts, which is not that many. It really isn't. So here you put in a prompt like update the homepage. There will be a tool call. Then that will send it back to my local coding agent, which will then send out another exchange to the large language model that will do some work, send it back, etc., etc. There'll be many exchanges, maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 50 exchanges before it actually comes back to me with a final response. And if you use Claude Code, you can see all of these exchanges happening in real time. So 150,000 doesn't seem like that many. It really does not seem like that many. I would not be that surprised if an individual could reach that number in, I don't know, a week or so. So to me, this 150,000 seems extremely out of whack with what they are claiming and state-sponsored, bioterrorism and surveillance and stuff. That's just not that many. So then we go down to Moonshot AI, and then the order of magnitude shoots up. So this is Kimi. This is over 3 million exchanges, and Minimax is over 13 million exchanges. Now with Minimax, we need to be really careful because Minimax actually had Claude available. So if you went into Minimax, it's gone now. I checked it this morning, but if you go into Minimax agent, see this auto bar. It has Gemini, it has Minimax M2.5. That used to have Claude in there. You used to be able to call on Claude. So Minimax actually had a deal with Claude, and they were piping through Claude models inside of Minimax. So I would wonder if any of these exchanges are related to that, in which case that would explain why it's a much larger number. But that was a deal that they had with Anthropic. So I would be extremely surprised if Anthropic had included that in their count, because that would be very much artificially inflating that number. It has now disappeared for good reason, because they're accusing them of espionage basically. But we did used to have Claude in here, strangely. And then the final one is Kimi. Somebody in chat has already said that sometimes Kimi refers to itself as Claude. So that is a bit of a smoking gun. And we have 3 million exchanges here. So Moonshot Kimi models employed hundreds of fraudulent accounts spanning multiple access pathways. Varied account types made the campaign harder to detect as a coordinated operation. We attributed the campaign through request metadata which matched public profiles of senior Moonshot staff. Whoops. In a later phase, Moonshot used a more targeted approach, attempting to extract and reconstruct Claude's reasoning traces. So potentially, the fact that it calls itself Claude is probably a big giveaway here. But altogether, these number of exchanges are not that huge. I watched a video by Theo, so he's a lot more aggressive on this. He says, I'm pretty confident this is a lie. He runs T3 chat, which is basically a chatbot which allows you to access multiple large language models. And he pulls up his data during this video showing you how many exchanges are going through his routers, through his servers basically. And even on his relatively small, here we go, his relatively small, compared to these companies, piece of software, he's seeing about 4 million, this is, yeah, about 4 million exchanges per month coming through this. So these kind of numbers are not, they're not that wild. He also points out that this could be benchmarking. So using Claude in benchmarking and benchmarking against it, because these numbers again are not the kind of numbers we'd expect to see if this was a full-on, full-scale attack. So Theo goes a bit further and he says that basically Anthropic are lying, a lot more aggressive. What I will do is put this in the newsletter tomorrow so you can watch Theo's video as well. I think Anthropic are not necessarily lying. I think they're certainly blowing this up to make it something much larger than it is. We know distillation happens. Distilling on your competitor's model is cheeky, but to blow it up and call this basically a national security threat, and to ask for industry players, policymakers, that's Washington, and the global AI community to come together and help you fight this, I think is pushing it a little bit. I think they are trying to raise money by making this an America versus China narrative. I think they're trying to get more concessions from the US government and potential aggression against the Chinese AI labs. I think they're also trying to push back on open source inside America and globally by pushing this narrative that open source is dangerous, and as soon as you open source or allow the Chinese to do this kind of stuff, the ultimate goal is going to be biochemical weapons, malicious cyber activities, the fall of the American government, etc. I think that they are using this as a dog whistle to push a narrative, because when you look at these numbers, it's kind of amateur hour here, especially if we wonder about this Minimax and the fact that they used to have Claude inside of their tool officially. So it's complicated, and we will find out what is happening moving forward. I think one thing that we definitely need to talk about, though, is the the irony here. So Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, all of them, none of them are free of this. They trained on public data. They scraped the internet. They also trained on things like Anna's Archive. Anna's Archive is, I'll pull it up on stream if nobody's ever seen it. Here we go. Anna's Archive is the largest truly open library in human history. There are 53 terabytes, 300 terabytes. This is 300 terabytes. This has every single book that you could ever want on here. This has all of the scientific papers, etc., etc. Probably shouldn't show this on stream, but I'll get rid of it. So scraping Anna's Archive, or even buying Anna's Archive. Apparently some people got caught trying to license it so they could get faster download speeds. So basically using copywritten material, infringing IP, scraping things like the New York Times without consent, and then using the don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness model. So you rush ahead, you scrape all of this information into your large language model. And again, this is not just Anthropic. This is OpenAI. This is Google. This is absolutely everyone. They pull all of the information in. If it's copywritten, oh well, pull it in, pull it in, pull it in. Build your model, make your model as good as possible, realizing that, you know, the New York Times and publishers and recording artists, that's the new lawsuit, will come at some point and be like, hey, you trained on our copywritten material. You can't do that. And knowing full well that this is going to happen, and then you settle with them. So Anthropic in particular settled, I think it was, here we go, $1.5 billion to settle a book piracy lawsuit. This was a few months ago. So Elon Musk, rightly, in this case, he says Anthropic is guilty of stealing training data at massive scale and has had to pay multi-billion-dollar settlements for their theft. This is just a fact. He is right here. He is absolutely right. So on the Anthropic post about claiming China is stealing their work, lots of people of community noted, well, basically you train on stolen data. That's just how this works. And they've pointed out things like Anthropic settled a 1.5 billion lawsuit for pirating 7 million books from shadow libraries like Anna's Archive to train Claude, and faces a 3 billion suit for torrenting 20,000 songs. They built their models on stolen creative work, then complain when others extract their output. Anthropic also train using stolen data. Anthropic use stolen data, etc., etc. And they have settled on this. So they settled a $1.5 billion suit, which is basically saying, yep, you caught us. This is the don't ask for permission, it's beg for forgiveness. And all of the labs do this. Again, not Anthropic. We've seen deals between most of the major labs and publications like the New York Times with Reddit, which they all scraped. And then eventually when they got caught, they're like, okay, let's cut a deal. And again, we see this pattern. So there is an irony here that these frontier labs are very happy to use other people's data, to build their own large language models that are very happy to use intellectual property, to use copywritten material. But then when a Chinese lab comes along and copies their homework by using a distillation method, then, oh no, gosh, no, our work, our intellectual property, our data is sacrosanct and you're not allowed to do that. You can see the irony here. People will argue, well, it's not actually the same, but it's not that dissimilar, let's be honest. So that's why it reminded me of The Princess Bride. You're trying to kidnap what I've rightfully stolen. This is basically robbing bandits at this case. So we do need to recognize the irony. I'm sure people will argue this. I'm sure people will say, well, it's not the same for these reasons. And I'm sure Anthropic have written many very good essays about why training on intellectual property is actually fine for these reasons. But it's not that dissimilar, let's be honest. So we will find out what's going on with this. I think there's going to be a lot more investigation into these claims here over how much was actually stolen. We haven't heard anything from the Chinese labs. I don't know if we will. I don't know if we need to. I'm sure this will pop up again if and when the new DeepSeek model comes out. There are rumors that it's nearly here, and it would be, I assume, extremely good. And remember that last time DeepSeek released a model, R1, which was back in early 2025, it caused a lot of fear in the American markets, because suddenly the Chinese had created something that was pretty much just as good as the best American models, but supposedly at a tiny, tiny fraction of the cost. We might see that again in the next couple of months when DeepSeek released their new model. And we're already seeing it with things like Minimax. So Minimax and Kimi, fantastic models. Minimax also, by the way, if you are interested, where's the agent? Terrible website. Pull up the Minimax agent. They have, here we go, Max Claw. So you can, I'm not signed in at the moment, but you can do a one-click setup for OpenClaw. So whilst a lot of the American labs, especially Anthropic, have said absolutely not, and they sent a cease and desist to the OpenClaw founder, the Chinese labs are saying, yeah, sure, come one, come all. We'll help you get set up with OpenClaw. We think this is a cool project. So they're playing a blinder of a game, I have to say. Right. So obviously this is all still developing. We will see how it pans out. I will put in the newsletter Theo's video. He's a lot more aggressive about this. People are in the comments saying, I have the feeling you have a deal with OpenAI. In his defense, Theo has always been very anti-Anthropic, and he does not hide that. There is no he's very clear he doesn't like them and he doesn't like what they're doing. So this video, take it with a pinch of salt, but I think the evidence that he presents and the argument that he goes through is very, very compelling. So I will include that in the newsletter tomorrow. If you are not signed up for the newsletter, head to aiwithkyle.com and join the community, and you can find the details here. You'll get a bunch of free courses, a catalogue of all my playbooks, the daily update, which is going to be a distillation of what I've been talking about today, as well as the edited YouTube video as well. So you get a whole bunch of stuff. That's all at aiwithkyle.com/join. Before I forget as well, I'm also giving a webinar on Thursday. So if you go to aiwithkyle.com courses, and then I should make this easier, shouldn't I? AI Workshop Masterclass. You can find the webinar. So there's going to be one on Thursday at 6 p.m. UK time, and then a few more next week, talking about how you can begin to teach artificial intelligence to companies. So businesses around the world need this right now. They're trying to work out what they're doing with artificial intelligence, and you can make good money by going and being the person who shows them what they should be using it for, shows them what they shouldn't use it for, and how to tell the difference between the two. So I'm going to be talking about how you learn public speaking, how you facilitate a workshop, what kind of content you're going to be talking about, what level of AI knowledge do you need to be able to teach, and how to find clients and build a business off the back of this. So I personally charge about £2,000 per hour when I give a workshop, and I have a bunch of students, about 150 students, who go and do the same thing globally as well. So I'll be talking to you about how we do that and how we get started. So either go to the website, you'll be able to find the details, or sign up for the newsletter, and we'll send out an email probably today and one tomorrow with the webinar sign up details, and that's free as well. Okay, I'm going to switch over to some questions and see what's going on here. How many of the millions of people who don't use AI are potential consumers of the people who do pay? Like customers? How many? Well, okay, using AI is one thing, but you still need a business model. So just doing AI is not a business. So you need to come up with a business, and then you can leverage AI to make it cheaper for you to provide a service, provide a product. You can use AI to help you build whatever it is you're creating. But just AI itself is not a business model. I've got a course here actually, which is free. So it's a 10-week course walking you through how to start a business using AI, but the business itself isn't AI, if that makes sense. It's slightly subtle, but using artificial intelligence makes it easier than ever to start a business, and it's a really good time to do so. It's also an important time to do so because if all of your income relies on your 9-to-5 job, that's really risky, really risky, because it doesn't matter what people are saying. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to create new jobs and it's just going to be like the Industrial Revolution and humanity will sort itself out. No, we are about to get hit with an absolute train by artificial intelligence. The big thing, why it's different to all of the technological kind of revolutions and innovation before, is that yes, AI will make new jobs, 100%. It will not fill those jobs with humans, because it will create the new jobs and then AI will be able to do the new jobs. That's the shift. We have for the first time a technology that can potentially replace our whole cognitive load, and it can perform an entire job like a human being can. Previously, most tools would allow us to do a part of that job, allow us to do certain tasks better, more efficiently. Great, fantastic. This is different in that it can come up with the tasks and then do those tasks better than we can. That's a shift. So artificial intelligence is absolutely going to destroy jobs. It's absolutely going to destroy industries. And if you are relying on your 9-to-5 job now, that's risky. So what I highly recommend people do is they stay in the 9-to-5 job. You continue to get income for as long as possible, but at the same time, you start setting up alternatives. So it could be consulting, it could be freelancing, so that's a service, or it could be building some kind of product, building some kind of business. But you need to have an alternative source of income, preferably 4 or 5 different ones, because we do not know what's going to be safe. And anyone who says they know what's going to be safe is stupid or lying, basically. So what we do is we diversify so that we have multiple different sources of income, multiple kind of things that we can fall back on, and then hope that a few of them survive. That's the only safe thing we can do. Do you think human people power skills still have a future, or are we outsourcing that too? I think, oh, do you mean like physical labor? Physical labor and blue collar jobs, plumbing, electricians, contractors, builders, etc., will be safer. They will be safer from artificial intelligence because they require physicality, and our robotics is way behind. Let me see if I can pull it up. Our robotics are way behind our artificial intelligence at the moment. They won't be for long though, but right now they are behind. Let me see if there's a... Here we go. So I talked about this in a live last week, because unemployment amongst young people in the UK just hit 14%, which is a bit scary. So I did talk about what kind of jobs are safer. So I think these are the more resilient roles. Anything that has a physical reality. So if you're physically having to manipulate stuff in the world, that's going to be safer because robotics are behind. If the majority of your job is done behind a computer screen, your job's probably done for. It might take years, but eventually it's gone. So if you're sitting at a computer and you're doing all your work behind a computer, it's not looking good. So unstructured physical reality is a lot more protected from artificial intelligence. The really good example here is something like a nurse. So a nurse doesn't know what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. There's always going to be different tasks depending on who's on the ward, basically, who the patients are, who the doctors are, who the other colleagues, what comes into the ward on a daily basis is very unstructured. So nurses are physical work as well as cognitive, obviously, but there is a physical reality to it, and it's an unstructured physical reality. So that's a really strong position. Another category here is anything that requires high empathy and trust. So I think it's going to become more important being able to communicate with people, being able to build relationships, build a network, being able to do things like public speaking, being able to talk to people, convince people, lead people. I think these skills are going to become more and more in demand in the future. And then anything that has a legal or fiduciary liability, this is just going to slow it down. So right now, AI cannot be held legally responsible, which means jobs like lawyers and accountants are going to be safer for a lot longer. In a way, when I hire my accountant, I'm not just paying her to put together my books. I am taking a portion of my my legal responsibility and placing it onto her and her organization. If she messes up my books, yes, I still get in trouble, but I can take a certain portion of that blame over to her. Same with lawyers. So any profession where they take on legal or financial liability, fiduciary liability, they're going to be safer as well, until we work out systems where AIs can take that liability. But that requires us to potentially declare that AIs are people in the same way that corporations are in America, and then to start to apply similar legal rights and responsibilities to AIs. And that's just going to take a long time, if it ever happens at all. So these are characteristics of a more AI resilient role. But it's going to come for most industries. And even if you're in an industry which feels extremely safe, so the example I gave here was like a physiotherapist. A physiotherapist, you are interacting with people, there's high empathy, it is physical, it's unstructured physical reality, and there is a certain amount of liability. Like if you break someone's back while you're manipulating them, that's a problem, obviously. But just because your job is relatively safe does not mean that your business will survive. Because remember that the people who have no longer have safe jobs, they no longer work in safe industries, they are suddenly going to be unemployed. And unless our governments work out universal basic income or some other solution, which I don't think they're going to be able to, and if they can, it's going to take an awfully long time. If people don't have money, they can't pay for the service that you provide. So if you are a physical therapist, suddenly you might see your client base drop off a cliff because your previous clients who worked in finance, who worked in offices, wherever they worked, they can no longer pay you. So even if your particular role is protected by these different characteristics, it doesn't really matter if the rest of the economy is in the shitter. So we all need to get ready. We need to get ready right now because it's coming. This is not me being alarmist. This is me trying to wake people up to the reality of we cannot just sit back and wait and see what happens. And we cannot rely on corporations like Anthropic and governments like the UK government and the American government to guide this in a direction that is beneficial for all of us. We need to take responsibility and take action ourselves and not rely on them, because good God, they're not competent enough to be able to shepherd us through this. It's kind of up to you. So that's why I put together AI with Kyle, is to help people get ready for this, help them realize what's coming, and to be realistic about it, and hopefully to build your own sources of income, your own businesses, so that you have some kind of protection against what's coming. What do you think about lawyers? So I actually addressed this previously. I think that the industries are going to be hollowed out because we're not seeing it yet, but as the economies start to repair and go on the upswing, which hopefully we'll see in the next couple of years, employees now have a choice. You don't normally, when our markets and our economy start to revive and start to do well, we start to hire more. Our companies hire more so they can be more productive, they can sell more, and they can grow during a boom period. That is no longer required. So when you were looking at hiring and scaling up your operation, you now have choices. Previously, it'd be like, okay, great, we've got money, we've got more customers, we need to get go. Let's hire. And you see this every time we go into a boom, hiring rises because people want to take advantage of that boom. Now companies have a choice. We can hire, sure we can hire. That's what we always do. Or we can maintain headcount and augment those people using artificial intelligence, so we don't have to hire. Cool. And suddenly one person is doing the job of 5 people. We don't need those other 4 people. We don't need to create new positions. Or do we even need people at all? What bits can we automate? Which bits, what tasks can we just remove using artificial intelligence? So there are now choices. So I think AI is going to take our jobs. AI is going to take my job. That is too crude. AI is not necessarily going to take jobs. AI is going to stop new jobs being made. It has the same end effect, which is people sitting at home with no jobs, but it's not literally going into the accounting department and snatching poor Doris out and taking her job. That's a bit too crude. Instead, it's just going to stop new jobs being created. We don't require those new roles, and then unemployment will still increase. So it's more insidious. You're not going to get fired because of AI. You're just not going to get hired. So I think that's what we're going to see over the next couple of years. What this means in things like legal work, in legal work in particular, entry-level legal work is it's very dull. It's things like discovery. It is going through huge amounts of documentation, huge amounts of kind of legal precedents, and finding patterns and helping to put together a case based on the patterns that you find within that large corpus of documentation. Do you know what's really good at that? Artificial intelligence. So what we'll probably see is that grunt work at the bottom of the pyramid in law, also in finance, in many professions, that grunt work will get chopped out. It won't be required. We don't need humans doing that grunt work if we can just give it to an AI and get an answer that is 90% as good. That means that we stop hiring at the low levels because we don't need as many people doing that grunt work. And then that leads to this unfortunate position where we are hollowing out the bottom of the pyramid. That starts to collapse in on itself because we're not hiring as many, but that means there's less people to progress up the pyramid, and you end up with something that looks a bit like this. This is the population graph of Japan, and can you see how this is narrowing at the bottom, and you get this very precarious looking shape, and then eventually upside down pyramids. In the case of a company, what's the point about having most of your workers in senior positions, in leadership positions, when they don't really have anyone to manage? And that's when you crush it all. So I think this is what we're going to see. And I see the argument against this being like, well, firms won't do this to themselves. They won't not hire because they know that 20 years down the line, this will collapse the whole firm. Or if they're all doing it, it will collapse the industry. This kind of depends on people taking the long view. And remember, the people making the decisions are leaders who are going to be retiring in 10 years or so. If they can save some money right now by not hiring as many juniors, by using artificial intelligence, even if the AI is not good enough, they're going to do that. They're going to do that because they don't care what happens to the firm in 20, 30 years. They might say they do, but let's be realistic here. So I think that's what we're going to see happening at a lot of companies and a lot of industries, with the bottom just getting absolutely knocked out, creating this uneven pyramid, and then an inverted pyramid, and then collapsing. At the same time, it's really hard to progress up this pyramid if, well, one, there are no jobs, but if you do get a job, if you are not doing the grunt work, if instead it's you doing the grunt work of 10 people using artificial intelligence, you're actually robbed of your learning. So you don't get the friction of learning how to do the task. I did another presentation on this, which is about cognitive friction, basically. The old way of learning something meant you had to make a lot of mistakes. You had to get things wrong. You had to follow dead ends. You had to be corrected and put back on your path. You no longer need to do that now because we can work with an AI and get to an answer very, very quickly. And that takes the learning away from us, which means that if you are a junior, you can no longer cut your teeth on that basic work because it's very inefficient for you to do so, but that robs you of the learning as well. So I think the problems are going to be more insidious. It's going to be quieter. It's not the kind of big Skynet AI dystopia, but instead it's just going to be a chiseling away of entry-level jobs, and then that's going to flow up over the next 5-10 years, 10-20 years, and eliminate industries entirely. When will blue-collar jobs get taken over? This is a question on YouTube. When robotics catches up, and robotics is behind at the moment, but it's, I mean, let's see how much a Unitree robot costs us now. I love this. I love at the top, the categories on the Unitree website are robots, human, industry, fitness. Let's have a look at the human. So we've got humanoid robots, H2, the R1, G1. So I think H2 is the newest one, right? I can't even tell if that's real anymore. Let's see how much it is. I think I need, oh no, I can buy one. So a G1 is £13,000. Sorry, $13,000. I think when they get to a price when anyone can afford to have one in their house, like this one, R1, this is $5,000. Still a lot of money, but it's not that much money. And when it gets to things like, hey, while you're out at work, this robot's going to go around and clean your house. Suddenly it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't need a cleaner anymore. So that will save a certain amount of money. When it gets to, oh, it can also, do the cooking for you, and suddenly you're saving an hour a day on cooking. We will start to have these, be able to do the cost benefit of it. And especially, I think it was Unitree, you could rent it. You could pay, I think it was $500 a month or so, bring it into your household and it would do your household tasks. We're not there yet, but these prices are coming down fast, extremely fast. So Unitree H2, which is the more advanced one, that is 30,000, and the H1 is 90,000. Again, out of budget for most people on a daily basis, but getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And all of this has come from China. So Boston Dynamics, etc., fantastic. They're doing some really cutting edge stuff, but the Chinese companies are the ones who have the manufacturing capabilities to actually make this a reality. When this happens, that's when blue collar jobs will start to collapse. But it is currently behind large language models. It's behind AI inside of our devices. If people aren't working, how can businesses thrive? Yeah. AI isn't fully making sense. Correct, 100%. So you're thinking of the second and the third order effects. If AI does take our jobs, we're not working, there is no income, we cannot buy goods and services, businesses collapse. You're thinking further ahead. Most businesses will not think that far ahead because they're thinking about the next quarter, they're thinking about the next year, they're thinking about retirement, these leaders. There's also the fact that they don't have a choice. So if other competitors in their market are using AI and they're not, they will just go out of business. It doesn't matter what the overall trend of this is. It doesn't matter if this is going to dismantle capitalism. If you are running a business, you are thinking, oh God, how do I keep making money in the world of AI? The way to do that is by using artificial intelligence. So you're thinking much further ahead than everyone. Businesses, one, won't think that far ahead. And two, even if they do, realize that there's nothing they can practically do about it. And the best thing for them to do is to also get involved and to use artificial intelligence to decrease costs and increase revenue. They're kind of stuck. And it's a Pandora's box. This is now out there. It's not going back in the box. Secret Law is saying, I totally agree. This is to do with law. I'm going to get that robot off the screen. Using it for the grunt work, so legal work, is better than any paralegal. Yeah, so there was a, let me find it. I think it was in The Spectator. Oh, God. That's bad. I just Googled lawyers and Spectator and it popped straight up. So AI will kill all the lawyers. So this is from a senior barrister. Okay, it was a couple of months ago. It's worth reading. It's a really funny article. Basically, the Spectator journalist goes out, takes out a barrister friend, like a senior barrister, gets him drunk over some espresso martinis and gets his real thoughts about what's going on with AI. And the barrister's basically saying, yeah, it's dumb. We're dumb. So he said, last week we did an experiment, a kind of simulation. We took a real, recent and important case, a complex civil court appeal, which I wrote, and it took me a day and a half. We redacted all identifying details for anonymity and confidentiality, and we fed that same case into Grok-heavy AI. No idea why they're using Grok. Don't worry about that. And then we asked it to do what I did. After some prompting, the end result was, he shakes his head, spectacular. Actually staggering. It did it in about 30 seconds and it was much better than mine. And remember, I am very good at this. Yeah, it's coming, unfortunately. Lots of research now saying AI is hyped. Yeah, it is. What are your thoughts? It's extremely hyped. But what we need to do is separate out the financial hype. So the fact that a lot of money is being thrown at AI right now, and that includes into GPUs, into data centers, into cloud providers, but also into OpenAI and Anthropic. A lot of money is being thrown at them without any particular return on investment planned. It's basically, oh, that will work itself out. So that is arguably speculation. That is a market bubble that is forming up. Now, a market bubble is very different to a technological bubble. So think back to the dot-com boom and bust. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, a lot of dumb money was being thrown at internet companies. Pets.com is the most famous example. It wasn't actually an internet company, but because they had a website, they didn't really have a business, but they had a website, they had pets.com. Money was thrown at them, huge amounts of money. I think they bought a Macy's Day Parade balloon. They just spaffed all the money on stuff without actually having a working business. So that was a financial bubble. That popped, 2000, 2001, caused a recession, a big one. But out the back of that, we had the internet. So the technology and the financial situation are not necessarily intertwined. We've had other bubbles, I want to say like crypto, Web3, NFTs, where the technology and the financial bubble go hand in hand. So a lot of people get really excited about it. The prices of Bitcoin or NFTs or whatever it is go up and up and up and up and up and up. And then they crash when people realize that, okay, we haven't actually found a use for this technology. So that could arguably, depends on what you think about crypto, but that could arguably be a financial bubble and a technological bubble. Internet of Things is another one, or the metaverse. Lots of dumb money was spent on it. Meta, or Facebook, renamed to Meta because they're like, this is the new thing. And it never came to anything. So both the technological and the financial bubble popped. I think AI, or generative AI, large language models, is going to be much more like the internet than it is like NFTs. The reason being that a lot of people are using it already on a daily basis, whereas something like blockchain was a it's a solution looking for a problem. And quite an elegant solution, but there weren't enough people out there who needed it. Whereas generative AI, ChatGPT has a user base of 900 million people, about 1 billion people. What's that, 16% of humanity in 3 years? That's not just because it's hyped, it's because people find it useful on a daily basis and they're using it on a daily basis as a tool. That makes it much closer to the internet than to NFTs, because normal people, 1 billion people, are using it on a daily basis. So yes, we'll probably see a financial correction. Yes, we'll probably see a crash. The Chinese and the whole thing we were talking about today is connected to this. I'm sure China or Beijing would love it if the American financial bubble around AI popped. That'd be fantastic for China. Thank you very much. But we're still going to be using AI because it is too powerful a tool and it's too useful. So I think it's overhyped in the financial sense, underhyped, if anything, in the practical sense. So what will economics look like if it's going to change the capitalist model of UBI? We don't know. This is the question. I don't trust any of the current governments to sort out UBI, personally. There isn't enough money anyway, so where are they going to get the money for UBI from? I know there's been a number of experiments, I think 160 odd experiments, mainly in Northern Europe, Finland, Sweden, Norway, etc., where UBI has been shown to work. Rolling that out on a large scale, I don't see the practical way to do that when our governments already don't have any money. But I'd love to be proven wrong. I just don't see the current, I'm thinking of the UK government, but I'm sure it's the same in America. I'm sure it's the same in most places. I just don't see our current set of rulers being able to pull that off with any degree of competency, and without sticking their hands in and stealing all the money and making sure that they are okay, thank you very much, but screw the rest of you. So I think UBI is a wonderful idea, but as long as we rely on the governments to provide that for us, I don't think it's going to happen. Governments are burying their heads as it's a hot potato and political suicide to be open about it. Yeah, this is the other thing. We're only going to start talking about UBI when it's too late. When everything's collapsed. And then at some point, some brave soul will be like, we should probably look after our people, right? We should probably work out some way to make sure people can eat. It will only happen after the collapse. Anyone up front will be, they'll become a pariah for talking about it. And I don't think they have enough long-term thinking to be able to deal with this. So this is where China is very good. China is very good at thinking in the long term. They set out a plan. It might be decades and decades in the making, and they will just get on with doing it. So that's why things like sustainable energy, they're about to become able to fully sustain their electricity requirements based on sustainable energy, while we faff around over one or two wind farms. Things like railways, the number of railways built, let me put it up, versus to Europe. Like if you're in Britain, you know we've been trying to build one railway for the last 10 years or so, more than that, and we can't manage that. In that same time, China's built thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers of good railway too. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it. No, this is raw material. But they're very good at putting out a plan. Oh, here we go. This is the length of, I don't know how. Oh, this is from the MC of the People's Republic of China. Length of high-speed rail connections in commercial operation by country. So China has 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. Japan has 3,000, so they overtook Japan's high-speed Shinkansen a long time ago. US, where I don't think the UK is even here. This is coming from the People's Republic of China's Facebook page, so let's take it with a pinch of salt. But their ability to plan and execute big scale projects far outstrips anyone in the West. So being able to deal with things like UBI, being able to deal with, hey, what does this artificial intelligence mean? I have more confidence in their ability to work that out than I do with our governments right now. China has every child learning and using AI. UK can barely open a folder. Yeah. So I was in Beijing last year. When was it? Yeah, sometime last year. And so I used to live in Beijing, and I speak Mandarin. And I went to my favorite bookshop in Beijing, and the front, you know, when you go into a Waterstones or you go into kind of a Barnes and Noble or whatever it is, they always have like the bestsellers, the books that you should be reading at the front of the store. Went in, it was all DeepSeek books. It was all, here's how to use DeepSeek. Here's how to use DeepSeek for your work. Here's how to use DeepSeek for, you know, your personal life. Just piles and piles of DeepSeek books. They were also at the counters. So it's like, oh, why don't you just pick up a quick DeepSeek book? They take it very seriously. And whilst I was there, got lost in a hutong. I was looking for a particular hot pot restaurant. Couldn't find it on the map. I talked to a nai, like an old lady, she's probably 70 or so, and I asked her for directions. And she had this thick Beijing accent, which I struggle with sometimes. It's very very piratical. It's a cool accent, but she had this thick accent, so I was having real trouble understanding her. And then she's like, okay, don't worry. And she pulled out a telephone, and she didn't go to like a translate app or anything. She went straight to DeepSeek. and basically put in, hey, this young man is looking for this restaurant. Can you tell him where it is in Chinese? In English. And it translated. So this was a 70-year-old woman who was using DeepSeek just after it had come out as well, because DeepSeek was 2025 early months. So they are adopting it very quickly. They are educating their children. They're proud of it as well. On the flight over to Beijing, I sat next to somebody and I was chatting to her, and she was from Hangzhou, which is where the home of DeepSeek. Is it Hangzhou or Suzhou? Hangzhou. And she was proudly telling me about what DeepSeek have been doing. And she didn't work for them or anything. She was just very proud of the fact that they were kind of a leading AI company. So it's very different from in the West, where we have a lot of people who are extremely scared of it, for good reason. A lot of people who are skeptical, and a lot of people who are just burying their head in the sand. China's not doing that. China's on it, because they realize that this is the technology that is going to matter moving forward. So we have to embrace it. If AI could do everything, will jobs survive? I know it's a basic question, but as I learn more of AI, it gets back to the basics again. If AI can do everything, will jobs survive? No. No, we're not needed. That's the short answer. The question is whether AI can do everything. And right now it cannot, but it is improving very, very, very fast. And even if you're not a coder, even if you're not a programmer, it's worth paying attention to what's happening in coding, because that's where a lot of the efforts are being placed right now. So there's this idea of a jagged frontier in, let me put it up, a diagram, jagged frontier in development, where AI is very good at some things and terrible at others. Part of the reason is the different efforts put into different areas. A lot of the efforts right now are being focused on making AI very good at coding, very good at programming. A couple of reasons why. One, the people building it are coders, they are programmers. This is what they know, so they're able to make these systems better. Two, making better AI coding tools makes it easier to make better AIs in the future. So for example, Codex 5.3, the final version of Codex 5.3 was built using an early version of Codex 5.3. So we get this almost like recursive self-learning loop. So a lot of effort are being put into programming and coding right now. That means that's where we're going to see the first impacts on joblessness and it being able to just take whole roles from people. It's basically the canary in the coal mine. So even if you're not a coder, it's well worth paying attention to what's happening in that sector, because that's going to be coming to other sectors later. It's just the attention of the AI companies has not been turned on the other industries yet. The other thing is they are betting on being able to improve the model, you keep improving it until you have something close to AGI, artificial general intelligence, or maybe get AGI. Then you can just turn that on the other industries and it will sort them out. So you spend all of your efforts in one industry, coding and programming. When you have a good enough model built with your previous models, then you set it on law, you set it on medicine, you set it on accountancy, and you have it solve for those industries one by one. So pay attention to what's happening there. Again, even if you're not a coder, it's very, very important because it is a preview of what's going to happen in other industries later. Who's going to command AI and profit from it, or will capitalism vanish? So right now, the corporations, it's going into the hands of 4 or 5 people who are going to profit from it immensely. This is also why Anthropic are trying to make this a China versus America thing. They want the support of the American government. They want a lot of money, defense money, flowing into their company. That's why we talked about this attack earlier, this distillation attack from the Chinese. But yeah, this will potentially end capitalism as we know it, or hyper concentrate it into 3 or 4 companies, maybe 1. It might be winner takes all. It might be that Google just sucks everything else up. We're in a precarious position, let's put it that way. I think capitalism won't necessarily vanish, but it will change, and probably not for the better. Ellen says, you're so correct on all this, Kyle, and you're the only one I know talks about it. Thank you. Yeah, I think other people do. I think it's helpful that I'm not American, but I'm also not Chinese. But I've lived in both of these places. So I lived in Beijing for 2 or 3 years. I've lived in New York for 3 years, California and Texas. So I've lived in both of these places. But I'm obviously not from there. I'm from the UK. So I think I'm able to step back a little bit and see what both of these sides are doing. I'm also, like a lot of Europeans, I know enough to understand that we're out of the game, basically. Britain and Europe, or Europe as a whole, we're out of the game. It's done. We are not part of this. This is a 2-horse race. This is America and China, and that is it. Whereas I see a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn, who are like, yeah, we're going to bring back European sovereignty in the AI race. It's like, what are you talking about? No, you're not. So I think being British, but having lived in China and America is quite a useful perspective for what's happening right now, because it is between the two of them. Yes, this chat is interactive. User 159075214690541. Howdy. Sungming Lee says, what should everyone focus on? We don't know. That's the problem. We do not know what's going to be safe moving forward. So what you should do, in my opinion, is you build up as many revenue streams as you can. You set up your own business. You set up multiple businesses. Thankfully, it's quite easy to do now with artificial intelligence. I've built a free course, which is on aiwithkyle.com, AI business course, which takes you through how you do it. AI itself is not a business. You need to come up with something that's actually valuable, and then you can use AI to help you get it started very quickly. So this is a free course. You can find it all on the website. It's very detailed. This is 100,000 words plus, walking you through how you would find a niche, starting your distribution channels as early as possible, validating business ideas, and then vibe coding using artificial intelligence to build a proof of concept, a minimum viability product, then working with your audience, working with the people that you're talking to refine that. So we need to make sure we have market demand, and then going on to talk about marketing, how you take payment, how you grow, selling. I know sales is hard for a lot of people, etc., etc. So that's all free. It's a weird time because AI is going to be taking jobs. It's going to be removing 9-to-5 work. Don't quit your job. Continue to get that for as long as possible. That's scary. So that is a negative impact of AI. But a positive impact is it's never been easier to start a business than it has right now. And you can make good money. But it takes time. You need to get started with something. So what I'd recommend is, because we don't know what's going to survive over the next couple of years, diversify. Get a lot of different things on the go. I personally have about 5 or 6 different revenue streams, because I know one of them might just be eliminated overnight. Suddenly that's gone. So for example, I write this newsletter. So I do the live stream, and then I convert the live stream into a newsletter. But this newsletters might in a couple of years be completely pointless, because we're getting all of this from artificial intelligence. So I don't rely on this. This isn't my one business. I have multiple things on the go. So I think that is the only good answer. I can't give you a specific answer about what you should do, but I can say you should do a whole bunch of different things, have income coming from all of them, so that if one of them gets eliminated, 2 of them gets eliminated, you can still survive, basically. But what most people have is a job. They have one thing, and that is very fragile. It's just a very fragile place to be. People have to redefine their purpose. Yeah, many will struggle with identity post AGI. Yes, especially people who have wrapped all of their identity up in their profession. So that they say, I am a doctor, I am a lawyer. If that gets removed from people, that's hard. Like, that's, as well as the financial impact of losing a job, potentially, you're going to have the psychological impact of suddenly having that status, that importance removed. We see this when people retire. Some people retire really badly, and it's really hard on them because they were used to going to the office and being kind of important and being wanted and needed, and then suddenly they retire and that's gone. We will probably see a lot of that, but it's going to be a forced retirement because AI comes and takes that whole role. So you might have been a big hotshot lawyer, going into court every day, but if AI takes that from you in 10 years' time, yeah, that's a massive blow to your identity, to your status, to your ego. And it's something that we need to redefine. Somebody was saying, what should I do? One thing that's going to be really in need of the next couple of years is kind of, what would you call them? I guess career coaches or life coaches that focus on transition, that focus on change, that focus on helping people with big seismic movements in their status, in their identity. I think that's going to be a booming niche, sadly. Oof. And it's going to be well needed. How old am I? I'm 39. I look too young to have all that lived experience. I haven't even talked about the TV station I started. How did Europe miss the window for AI innovation? So it kind of didn't. Europe is really important to the foundation of all of this. So people like Geoffrey Hinton, Demis Hassabis are British. The problem is, so Google DeepMind, for example, was set up by Demis Hassabis. It was purchased by Google in, DeepMind purchase. Is it 2004? 2014, sorry. 2014. You should watch The Thinking Game if you haven't. It is a documentary. It's on YouTube, and it's about the history of DeepMind, and it's actually a really good documentary. I know it sounds boring, but it's fantastic. So they were purchased in 2014 by Google, and basically DeepMind is the core of Google AI. It's the research lab. They were purchased for what at the time seemed like an insane amount of money, but is going to probably go down in history in one of the best acquisitions of all time. So Google confirmed acquisition for a price reportedly between 400 million and 650 million. At the time, people were like, what on earth? This is a bubble. This is nonsense. Why would you buy this little scrappy team? This is absolutely ridiculous. That's an insane amount of money. Now, looking back, it's like, ooh, that was cheap. We've had Meta acquiring individual people for 250 million. So 500 million is a bargain for arguably the best AI research lab on the planet. So this is what happens to the British talent and the European talent. It gets purchased. So Peter Steinberger, for example, the creator of OpenClaw, he has just been hired by OpenAI. So he's Austrian. I think he lived in Vienna and London, moving between the two. He created something amazing. It got a lot of publicity. And he had Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman personally trying to poach him, trying to bring him inside. And somebody asked a question I think was really important was, I wonder how many European companies, how many European CEOs approached him. So this is what happens. They'll just get poached to America as soon as they show any talent. As soon as a company starts doing well, it will move to San Francisco. So our AI companies now, we have Mistral and 11 Labs. I think that's it. Oh, and then Lovable and some of the vibe coding tools. Lovable's up in Stockholm. Yeah. But even all of those, they tend to have a US office where they do a lot of the work anyway. So yeah, the money, it's the money. The money's there. And here I am trying to pay Sainsbury's bill. Yeah, I know what you mean. Right, I need to hop off because I have a call in 2 minutes. I'm going to be late to it, but thank you so much, everybody. As always, everything is going to be available on aiwithkyle.com. Someone at the door. Sorry, editor. As always, everything's going to be on aiwithkyle.com, so you can get the newsletter and a rundown of everything that I covered today. I'll also put in I've lost it now, but the slide deck, plus Theo's full breakdown as well. So make sure you check that out, aiwithkyle.com, and it's free to sign up, join the community here. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.